It also opens up the idea for me that I can actually put any color, or I can add whatever I want to this as long as I stay basically within a value scheme.
Michael, I think you need to pull the panel toward you a little bit.
It's going to come
Or
off.
doesn't have to come off the table.
That's good.
The table needs to be closer.
So I usually start out pretty wet and wet because we don't have all the time in the world. I'm going to be a little less, of that wet because, otherwise we just sit around, we watch paint dry, and that's not fun. So
what have you left dry?
pardon me?
What have you left dry? Your darks, your lights, what?
More or less the whites, yes.
Okay.
But really, this is as much, just developing mood and atmosphere. To me, I think that's one of the things that this medium helps do a lot. And remember studying, there wasn't a lot of green in the palette of the watercolor fundamental class. I remember, Hooker's was probably, the go-to. Once I left school, I had the pleasure, or I was traveling quite a bit, and my palette was quite small, so I didn't really carry that much green with me. And then everything became more of a, if I wanted the green, it was a mixture of blue and one of the blues, and a yellow or two. And actually at that time too, being younger and on a kind of a bohemian type budget, because I was traveling a lot. I was actually playing in bands and picking up jobs as a farmer and a bartender and all these other kind of things. I was working in acrylic for the most part, basically because it was cheaper and the tubes were larger and I could get more out of it. And I think I lived for a number of years just with an ultramarine, a cadmium yellow, and a cadmium red palette for a number of years, because that's pretty much all I could afford. So you learn how to make things work. And I still think staying within a triad, a world of triads is, I think, is one of the most enjoyable places, or to be. I don't. Most of the time, I don't think you really need that much more than that. But you can get some beautiful greens out of all this.
So instead of mixing them on your palette, you just mix them on the paper, or don't mix them at all, or just layers.
Yeah, I do. I like I said, there's. I have never mixed colors that haven't come up to this.
Right.
And this is what, this is where I say, yeah, is it an accident? No, it's not necessarily an accident. I kind of expect things to do this, but I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen. And I take joy in that. It's like the analogy I was using about the kids. You know, you do your very best and then you let it go and then see what happens. I find a lot of intrigue and enjoyment out of that great surprise. And you know, if it doesn't work, it's only paint, it's only paper. And you've got tomorrow to paint again. There's not a lot that I get upset about with whether it's gonna be the best. I don't know how some people feel, you know. I never walk into thinking this painting is gonna be the best I've ever done. I never put those expectations on myself. For the most part, it's all, I look at every painting, the start of every painting is practice. And that's how I pretty much go about it. I think that's the way it needs to be.
Why did you start painting such big, big pieces of paper?
Pardon?
Why did you start it? I mean, what took you from small and medium to large?
Ego. Prior to going full-time as a painter, I had an agency downtown in Chicago, and we did a lot of very large-scale projection filmmaking. Did a lot of work with Gatorade and AT&T. We did huge 100-foot screens and ballrooms and lit up buildings and all that kind of stuff. I got very used to seeing my work and my design work, which wasn't at that time painting. I just got used to seeing that. It was magnificent, to see that like that. The other thing, though, too, was going into the professional world full time. I didn't know how to begin, and I started in the art shows. And a lot of my work was traditionally within this kind of space, framed, and it was expensive. And even if I did sell a piece, if I sold a piece for $800 or something, well, by the time my framing and everything else came out, and art fees and everything else, I was netting at best half of that. I had a family. At that time, the kids were young. How do I make money on this? And that's very important for me, and I think for many artists. How do you make money on this? So that was part of it. Was how do I go big? The big transformation came when I found this aqua board, and I would call some of my art consultants or people that I was trying to get work from, and I said, well, what about watercolor, for this hallway piece? And they're like, well, we can't use watercolor. There's glass, there's, framing, there's everything else. It fades, blah, blah, blah. All the misnomers of watercolor that people throw out there. So I said, well, what if I gave you a piece that was 8 feet long without glass and this and that? And then, obviously, like I said, ego and it was an economic issue as much as anything. To sell a piece for $800 and make a net on that at $400. If I could move that into the thousands of dollars, then I could start maybe making a living. Was the whole idea. So it was really survival as much as anything. I had never found an opportunity to be able to sell enough, traditional sized pieces to make a living. I know there's professionals out, in the audience right here that do that very well, but I couldn't do the art shows anymore. I was doing some workshops. You know, you could make, there's a lot of different ways to make money, but just given my circumstances with being a father, a kid, you know, having the kids, being at home, I had to find a way to do commission work primarily. So, you know, it's really, you know, one thing leads to another. And yes, ego. I'm going to just get this dried out a little bit.
You're not plugged in.
Oh, yeah, that's right. No, sure, with all the technical problems we've had, the one thing I really do love about this whole medium is really just how simple it is. You know, it's paint, it's paper, and just, you know, time alone with the subject. Almost dry. Now, I'm not going to fill you up with too many Irving Shapiro stories because I'm sure many of you have those stories yourselves. And if you see me before, it's the same joke over and over. So I won't tell you too much, but I did have a very interesting encounter this summer. I was up at Five Line doing a demo, and I happened to meet I think it's Patrick Kennedy, Barbara Kennedy, who was teaching over at the American Academy just up until last year in the watercolor class. And he told me that he'd never met Irving. But he had a very similar story, which I found very funny, actually. He told me that, because I had the same experience, I was at the Deer Path Art Show a number of years ago, and a woman came up to me and said, "Oh my goodness, you know, your work's so nice. It reminds me so much of my father's painting." I'm like, oh nice. You know, thanks very much. And she's walking by with a stroller. She goes, "Oh, you might have heard of him. He's Irving Shapiro." I'm like, oh, well, this may be, I'm gonna write this one down, because it might be the nicest compliment I ever had. Well, it just so happened that Patrick Barber Kennedy, I think I had that for Kennedy Barber, he had that same experience. I told him that story. He goes, I met that woman, and she said the same thing to me. Maybe it's a pickup line, I don't know. But it doesn't get much better than that. I was looking over your website and the list of people that have come before me to do demos. It's amazing, the people that you can walk through here. Congrats to you and all the other presidents and chair people that have brought the artists through. I mean, it's the who is who of, watercolors in the Midwest. Pretty impressive, actually. So.
Michael, sometime during this next half hour, we usually take about a 10-minute break to get food and calendars and stuff. So whenever you need to maybe try something again, or whenever works for you.
Okay, let me do one quick pass, then
Sure.
we'll do that. Yeah, because I know time's been kind of
I'm sorry.
funky this morning.
We stole some of your time trying to get it.
Well, usually, I spend about 15 minutes just meditating and being real That didn't happen today. One of the nice things too, I just to keep some teaching in here. In the wet and wet, I think you were the one that was asking. Sometimes I'll just throw color in like this magenta, not knowing especially why or when I'm going to use it. But if I can throw that in on the first pass in a wet and wet, it kind of gives me permission to use this color later in, for maybe some of my darks or, as an accent some other place. And I can pick up, I've got permission to use this. I wasn't sure how I would, and I could always go over it or kick it back. But it's kind of nice because you wouldn't expect, that magenta to come out of this completely green scene. But now that I have that, I have, like I said, options, right.
What are all the blue colors that you have on your palette there?
It's pretty standard. It's ultramarine, cobalt, cerulean, and magnesium, or manganese. That's some indigo right there. Most of the time, especially when I'm working on commission piece, almost all the time, I usually keep 2 or 3 or 4 sometimes butcher trays of either different sets of colors, my blues, my warms over on one side, and maybe some special accent colors. Once I go into, like especially if I'm painting large, if I go into this, I need this whole thing, and I need all this paint. Like I've just got that, and this is all dry right now. But if I'm painting a large piece, this is actually one big hunking, it's a tube of blue.
Wow.
It's a whole tube. Wow. And it just gets, boom. And, so I pretty much have to keep these, separated in a lot of ways. I'm losing a little bit of hair, here. Yeah, but
Since you're not framing under glass, can you explain to us what you do?
I certainly can. But give me a couple of minutes, and let me get through some of this.
Did you have any sketch to start with, or is that just a blank piece of paper?
You know, I have some guidelines in pencil here, just to kind of block it out. But that's about it.
Now, is your paper totally dry or just damp in areas?
It's damp.
Want it dry though.
Yeah, I'm not in a real wet mode here. Basically, I don't put too much sketch in. I like to paint with my brush. Or, I mean, I like to draw with my brush as much as I can. I'm not opposed to pencil in paintings. As a matter of fact, I think graphite and watercolor are just the perfect companions.
Amen.
I love it. It probably kept me out of more shows and exhibitions than I'd like to admit, but I don't care, actually. I think it's a wonderful combination of mediums myself. And I think I'm setting up a pretty nice basic structure here, and then we can take a bio break and get some refreshments. I like that.
Does Mary ever want you paint or not really?
You know, like I told you, I find magic in all this. And no, she doesn't anymore because I work down the basement. She has an office upstairs. I see something like this happen. I'm like, oh my God, Mary, come here quick. Boom, 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 downstairs, downstairs, downstairs. What? I go, look at that. And it's like, she's going to strangle me. So, no, she doesn't watch anymore. You know us painters, we do get excited about that kind of stuff. And you have to tell somebody. Or you'd like to. And, you know, the kids, they've rolled their eyes 100,000 times now. So, but yeah, let's
Yeah, let's take a 10-minute break, get a calendar, get some refreshments,
Trying to remember what you were doing?
Yeah.
Give it a demo.
Someone steal your big brush?
Oh, no, I'm good. What kind of time frame are we on?
We need to be done around 11:30, so you got 30 to 40 minutes, for sure by 11:40.
Ah, okay.
All right, get the big brush.
Yeah.
I like your big
Okay then. So we don't have as much time as we'd like, but I'll certainly finish some of this at home.
Are you looking looking at your reference, or is it all coming out of your head now, Gary?
This is starting to come out of my head. I know I've got to build some negative shape down here. And seeing that we have only 30 or 40 minutes, I'm kind of trying to work a little quicker and bigger, which is actually kind of fine. And basically pull out some shapes that actually mean something. I don't like that. See if we can simplify this whole piece a bit more.
Is that Quinn Magenta, or what is that?
It's permanent magenta.
Do you think about creating a focal point or not really?
I do. I was trying to get this a little bit more defined.
How long does it take you to paint one of those large watercolors?
Oh, a 4 foot by 8 foot kind of piece.
Yeah.
Maybe a week and a half. But then there's a lot of prep that goes on before that, you know, washing out the sizing, and then after that there's a lot of varnish. There's usually about 5 to 7 coats of varnish that I put on, which is a UVLS varnish I use from Golden. Depending on the humidity, it might take 7 days, might take 10 days. And that all has to be kind of figured into the production time, I guess. And
You do this in your basement?
pardon me?
You said you do these in your basement?
Yes.
So who helps you carry that stuff upstairs?
Yeah. It's well, it's. I never realized how hard of a job it is to be an artist. I really, because
Everybody thinks fun. Oh, it's
Yeah, it's supposed to be fun. I mean, even my doctor said, well, Michael, you better start working out because, all you do is just sit all day and paint. I'm like, well, no, I'm like up and down and carrying 4 foot by 8 foot panels. But even, and, Priscilla and I were talking, anybody else that's been in an art show, whether it's indoor, outdoor, whatever, I mean, you're humping. You're moving a lot of stuff all the time, whether it's tents and panels or even just carrying, your traditional 30 by 40s and frames back and forth. It's a lot more difficult, I think, than anybody ever realizes. Um, it's a physical career. Um,
Will you gallery wrap that piece you're working on, or the big large one, gallery wrap, or after you do your varnishing, you mat them, or the gallery wrap, if you're not using glass?
um,
Will you frame them? Will you put a frame on them, or you would
what I'll probably do with this longer piece is I have somebody that will do some dry mounting for me, and they'll dry mount that, and I'll spray it. That's the other problem with this is that, and that's the other thing that moved me to varnishing on aquaboard and things like that, is that you get to a certain place and you can't get archival or non-glare plexi. I can get some plexi at 4 foot by 8 foot, but it's just a big mirror by the time you put it up there. So that doesn't work. So I'm more into, like, the bigger pieces are going to be varnished, dry mounted, and then you could more or less frame them any way you'd like. I like to put them in like a floater frame. Though I do, the one thing I miss the most in painting large is, I think everybody loves the look of that archival mat around the watercolor. I mean, I love matted paintings. They're just gorgeous. I mean, it's, the quintessential. And I have all the respect in the world. I wish I could do that with everything. But, I mean, most of the paintings I have of my own or even of other artists at my home are all, archivally matted and framed and, all that kind of stuff. Well, there's some nice things that are starting to come out, at least on here. There's some real nice shape. Just bring it a little more. Really needs a burst of sun. Tony and I were talking a bit about that magenta that I put in there earlier, and how it could be used for, the shadow and the darkness. And it does really work well, I have to say. I really like how this color combination. It's not the cleanest or the neatest painting, but I do like the combinations of it. Let's just get some nice. I should have put some of this, this time limit into my thinking before I came, because it's not getting me anywhere near, even finished on this round or two.
Well, to take a little pressure off you, you're not the first to not finish, Michael, and we do have people finish at home and send us then to Lori for the newsletter, the finished.
Oh, I'd love to.
We can do it that way.
More than anything, it's really been a joy to meet a couple of old friends here and just talk paint with everybody else here. That's not working at all. One of the things I find, I'm painting something like this. I mean, if you're painting a barn or a structure, or more of a classic scene like that, you pretty much know where you're going and what you should do. When I get into this, it becomes almost like a puzzle. It's a crossword puzzle. I'm trying to figure it out. Where's this leaf going to, and what's defining it by whatever is underneath that as the negative space. So if I'm not discussing too much right now, it's just I'm in this little quandary of, okay, now what the heck do I do? Which is, I think, a place we all go to, and it's okay.
Do you ever use alcohol or salt as a resist?
I'm glad you close that up with as a resist. Because I use both, but not as a resist. No, I mean, I don't consider anything that you use in, painting a trick or anything, but, I don't use a lot of things like that. I'm just trying to become a better painter, period, If I can do that, I don't need the other stuff.
A lot of your pieces have that tall grass like you showed us in the one today. And I was just wondering, is there like some super rigor you use to paint that, or how do you get the long strokes?
We were talking about that. Good boy. So no, the long strokes are just a the flat side of a large brush, and it's just a pole. I guess I look at all I've tried to do is create the best wash I could do, or the best stroke, and really that's it's almost, I don't want to say Zen-like or anything else like that, but my goal is actually can I create a stroke from one side to another that's the perfect stroke? Can I create the perfect wash? I can't, but I'm going to keep on trying, and it's just a matter of, like I said, it's practice, practice, practice. I met an artist that his whole goal in life was to draw the perfect circle, and that's all he was going to do all his life. And the interesting thing was, I thought it was a little silly, but the interesting thing was he really believed it, and that was his passion. And he used different color and other things, and he created really wonderful motifs. But it was just the idea of, following that same pattern and that same, just trying to be better every time. So that's kind of where that came from. So yeah, this is aquaboard. It's masonite, and what I love about it, from a watercolor standpoint especially, is this is the white board, but anything here, you can lift off of aquaboard like nobody's business. All of a sudden you have white in your palette. And that's the big no-no in our lives. We've been taught that. But all of a sudden I can start, instead of doing these negative shapes in dark, or having to leave my white and not touching it, I can actually go back in any of these spaces. I mean, I can create, and basically, like this line here, it doesn't get defined until I start putting my white space on either side and start defining. Same with this kind of brush. I can, define this whole movement. I found that tremendously exciting to have that option. I think it works in a variety of ways, in a variety of circumstances. I certainly haven't pushed it, any more than I've needed to. But
So you paint straight onto the aquaboard without any white golden product,
no,
straight onto it?
straight onto it
Then when it dries, you varnish it
with a golden UVLS varnish, and you can get that as an aerosol spray or as a jar that's water-based. I would recommend the water-based. The aerosol, unless you start getting into the aerosols, then you need to get the respirator and the fans, and it's actually not good for you. Not a bit, but it's a tremendous product. And I had this client that had well, actually, he wasn't a client, a prospective client, and he was real interested in this, and this is back years ago. But he had an industrial paint factory off of Elston. And he said that his paint was made for bridges and all that kind of stuff. He invited me down to his place because he said he had a UV room that had 70,000 watts of UV light where they would test their paints. I varnished a couple of paintings and did kind of series of sets and samples. I put it in there, I think, for 5 days, 24 hours a day of 70,000 watts of this UV light. It didn't change at all. Nothing escaped. It was just as brilliant as could be. So yeah, I stand by that product, for its, protection and. I mean, I still caution people. I mean, I don't want them to put my painting in the sunroom by any means. I mean, you want to spend $5,000 on a couch and put it, right there in the Four Seasons room like that. So,
Can I, the aqua board, is that how it comes, or is that a frame behind it?
You can buy it as a panel, or they do have X amount of sizes that are already framed, like this. Here, that particular
So
piece.
that's how it comes, yeah.
This particular piece, I had a woodworker take this, that was a larger sheet, he cut it down to 18 by 18, and then he built me this,
Yeah, that's what I
this
was.
tower. But this is right off the shelf from Blix or wherever.
Oh, so I see. This is like what they.
Does the paint, on that aqua board, does the paint move? Is it slick? Does it paint move? Or does it act like your paper?
It acts pretty much like paper. I mean, it's got its own personality and its own. I mean, there are some issues. Sometimes if you don't cure it well enough at first, it'll bubble on you. You'll get like some little bubbles, but you can dry that get that with a hair dryer and kick those back.
Did you say the name of the varnish that you use?
Golden Colors. It's a UVLS varnish. And I'm not endorsed by them. I don't make any money. I don't get free products. So,
You like the aerosol?
I love the aerosol, but like I said, it can be pretty toxic.
What advantage do you think you have with aerosol? A smoother surface?
Yeah, it's just a little harder, smoother, and you almost need to put a first coat of that on because it's the scariest thing in the world is, I mean, actually having a finished painting and then coming in with a roller or a brush and putting a water-based varnish on top. It's it hurts. Because in something like that, you have to put it real quick and you can't work it. So, I mean, if I do that, most of the time I'll use a foam rubber roller, those small little 6-inch foam rubber, real hard foam rubber, and just like do a quick. And what's even scarier is it's not going to go on the first time. It's not going to go on exact. You'll have spots where you miss and you'll have lines, but you just have to walk away and come back, 24 hours later and put another coat on it. So.
Foam rubber or rubber like a brayer, the hard one?
No, like the foam rubber, just, like you get it at Ace or Home Depot.
Yeah, they're real skinny.
Yeah, the skinny, thin ones.
How many coats would you say? More than 2.
I use, traditionally I use 7 coats. It's, and I think it's basically, because I can still see some, like, varnish lines and things like that, so, it was all trial by fire. I just kept on putting more coats of varnish and more coats of varnish on. But the one nice thing is, okay, so when you finally get all your coats on, and there probably are about 7 coats, just like any watercolor, you lose that vibrancy of, when we first put our paint down, it's bold and it's colorful, and you come back 45 minutes later, it's kind of dry, and it's just, well, you do it, well, on anything. I varnish that with that spray, it's going to explode. It's going to come back just like it was wet on wet, and it's going to stay that way, and it's pretty exciting, I think. It really just brings that whole thing back. Just pretty much the way you intended, right in the beginning. So
Does that varnish come in gloss versus matte?
it's gloss, matte, semi-gloss. Yeah.
So what is that? That's a semi-gloss maybe that you have on that, or?
I think that's a gloss. Yeah, this is gloss. They have satin that's, satin, and it's a real nice look. It adds, but it doesn't, make it that commercial looking, I guess. Oh. Yeah, I'm rushing this a little bit. This is still pretty wet in here. I shouldn't be doing this, but I just want to darken this and kick all this back. But there is some shape that's starting to take place here. Like I said, I probably should have started out a little smaller this time around, but. I'll tell you though, these things, this is, just a nod to Shapiro. And anybody that's watched him paint, you stand over him for an hour and and he's just putting in these little things. And you're like, what is he doing? And he walks away and it's like, holy cow, I see, everything they did, it just all comes. That was a magical time, to see that happen. How that can't inspire you to either, be a painter or maybe not be a painter. It's amazing. and it's funny, even when if I were to finish this, it's going to more or less be the same kind of look. I'm described more and more, it's funny, as an abstract painter. I never thought of myself as abstract. I always thought I was like realistic. Until then I started looking at this, I'm like, wow, that's kind of whacked out. Yeah. So maybe they were right, maybe, I'm just like music. I thought I was a blues player, but they called me avant-garde,
What do you play?
Oh, primarily guitar, but some percussion, little keyboard and stuff. That was more the old singer songwriter trucking around kind of days.
Probably another 5 minutes or so.
Yeah.
Wrap it up.
Yeah, I'm just messing. I don't think there's much I can salvage out of this in 5 minutes. So,
Done whenever you want then.
yeah. Well, I can see that this can still be saved and take shape.
At this point, are you trying to do more negative paintings to pull out shapes?
For the most part, yeah. Just trying to get a little bit more definition in this. That is one of the neat things about going into the negative shapes is that at one point that's the background that's out there, or that's all the way back, or this. But then you start going in, you say, oh, I can go deeper into the woods here. I find that probably one of the more intriguing parts when you get to the spot where you're actually really digging into these shapes, and you start to see the shapes within the shapes and the shapes behind the shapes. I'm sure many of you experience that too, where it becomes like a transcendental period. You actually fall into I do anyway. I shouldn't speak for anybody else. You fall into the painting, and it's like peripheral vision. Everything goes away, and you're there. And that I think that's one of the most exciting parts about painting, whether it's watercolor, oil, I mean whatever. When you can get to that point, it's like it's like you can shoot the 3-pointer all day, without thinking. You just set up and you shoot. I don't know if it's my upbringing or whatever, but I do make analogies to sports a lot and things like that. But what I was saying about perfecting the stroke, I play a lot of golf. I've swam quite a bit, and I think those are the kind of things that reinforce the idea of you just keep on doing one after the other, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be like the great, the Doesn't have to be the best or ever, you always have that next stroke. And I think that's kind of how it plays out in this too. Like I said, I didn't have my 15 minutes to meditate prior.
Well, we do apologize to you because literally that trouble at the beginning took time from your demo and we're sorry.
Oh, no, that's
Send us
fine.
the image later of the finished painting.
I will.
Do you have any final parting words for us?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for, bringing me into this community. I love you guys, I really do. I mean, it's so nice to be, I don't have a lot of connection with a lot of other painters. And to see others and, work with you, even for a couple hours, it's very special.
Let's give Michael a
Thank
big
you.
Thank you all for coming, and next month will be Dan Danielson, correct? Yeah. And he's another very quality painter, so we'll look forward to it.
Yeah, Dan's great.
Thanks a lot.